Canada as a U.S. state? Not a snowball's chance in hell, says the Prime Minister. Canada fires back after Donald Trump says he would use economic force to make this country the 51st state. And the Premier continues to push for a united approach.
Uncertainty on both sides of the border one day after Justin Trudeau calls it quits. We're going to have the latest on who could throw their hat in the ring to replace the Prime Minister.
Plus, freezing fares. The mayor confirms riders will not have to pay more in 2025. We're taking a closer look at the TTC's latest budget.
This is Live at 5. Good evening. I'm Bakari Savage.
And I'm Lena Latafat. Thank you for joining us here on Live at 5. The province says it is pushing ahead at strengthening security at the U.S. border with the threat of major tariffs looming. It comes on the heels of explosive comments made by President-elect Donald Trump today as he told reporters he's open to applying economic force to make Canada a part of the United States.
And for more on this, we're joined by CP24's Beatrice Vaisman, who joins us from Queen's Park. Beatrice.
Bakari, Lena, 13 days from now, Donald Trump is going to be in the White House. But today he was at his home in Mar-a-Lago talking about his plan. He says he's tired of subsidizing Canada and he's going to use economic force essentially to get us to do what he wants us to do on this looming threat of 25% tariffs on all Canadian goods being imported into the United States. And it's no small amount. Last year alone, more than $500 million of Canadian goods crossed the border to the U.S. And by the Americans' counts, this trade relationship accounts for millions of jobs on both sides of the border. And so here's what we heard from the incoming U.S. president earlier this morning.
Here's what we have. We have a right not to help them with their financial difficulties because we owe $36 trillion still. We're going to start knocking it out pretty fast, but we're going to be able to do it because of energy and other things. But no right. But why are we supporting a country, $200 billion plus a year? Our military is at their disposal. All of these other things, they should be a state.
Not so sure that's going to happen. Premier Doug Ford's been on the American networks. He was on CNN last night. He was on BBC last night as well, essentially sharing Canada's position. We've heard in the negotiations in the past, Donald Trump talking about some of his conditions to not impose these 25% tariffs on Canadian imports. Amongst those conditions, number one, strengthening the border between U.S. and Canada, essentially helping curb crime. Secondly, is boosting financial support to NATO. That's something he's been calling for a long time. The feds initially imposed or planned to impose a $1.5 billion plan to help bolster Canada's border. Well, that plan is now on the back burner that the House has been prorogued. And so Ontario, essentially, and the Premier have been trying to put pressure on the feds to take action to help secure the 49th parallel to curb illegal crime on this side of the border. And in doing so, the Premier today announced Operation Deterrence, which essentially includes 200 OPP officers being redeployed, reallocated to help curb crime on this side of the border. We heard from Chris Lewis, the former OPP commissioner, about just how big of a challenge it is to curb crime.
It's just such a long, porous border. The ports of entry in Cornwall and Lansdowne, Ontario, and Toronto and Niagara Falls, and Fort Erie, etc. They're staffed with CBSA officers, but they can't check everything that comes in. And then loads of other stuff are coming in across the St. Lawrence and in other ways, in virtually unpatrolled and unenforced areas that allow tons of stuff to come into this country, and at other times people going into the U.S. and maybe some fentanyl, etc. So to patrol all of that requires a dedicated force of hundreds and hundreds of officers.
Keep in mind the Premier nor any political leader can direct a police chief, or in this case the OPP commissioner, what to do with his officers. But certainly some kinds of conversations have happened behind the scenes with the OPP about what can you do to help us secure this border. As for the Premier, tomorrow 3:30 in the afternoon, he'll be meeting with all the other premiers from coast to coast to coast to come up with a Team Canada approach on how to tackle the Donald Trump problem. That problem, again, coming to the White House in 13 days.
Yeah, and it's a massive problem for Canadians. Beatrice Faisman reporting live outside Queen's Park tonight. Let's talk more about that. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau not mincing words in his response to Trump's comments today. Here's what he writes on X. There isn't a snowball's chance in hell that Canada would become part of the United States. Workers and communities in both our countries benefit from each other's biggest trading and security partner.
Well, the federal Liberals are now preparing to find a leader to take the party into the next election.
Justin Trudeau plans to resign as both Liberal leader and Prime Minister once a new leader is selected. He made that clear yesterday. And the president of the Liberal Party says a national board meeting will be held this week to begin that leadership process.
Well, so far, no Liberal MPs have announced their intention to run to replace Trudeau, but a contender could also come from outside of the party. That list of possibilities includes former BC Premier Christy Clark and former Bank of Canada Governor Mark Carney. Carney says that he is thinking it over.
And new data from Nanos research shows that while none of the above tops a survey of the most appealing replacements for Trudeau, former Deputy Prime Minister Chrystia Freeland and Mark Carney are coming in a close second and third place, respectively. Joining us now with more insight on these numbers is Nick Nanos, Chief Data Scientist and founder of Nanos Research. Good to be with you, Nick. Thanks so much for joining us. These results are so interesting. None of the above top the list. Tell us more.
I think a lot of that has to do with some Canadians that don't really care who might be leading the Liberal Party of Canada. And that's at around 1 out of every 5, that they don't like any of the choices and are probably don't really care who's leading the Liberals. You know, the good news is that there are some candidates that at least have appeal. You know, what's interesting is that setting aside Justin Trudeau, this survey was done the night before he resigned. Setting aside Justin Trudeau, it looks like the two individuals that would have the jump on the leadership race would be Chrystia Freeland and Mark Carney, both of them ahead of all the others. Dominic LeBlanc, Mélanie Joly, Champagne, Anand, all the others, including Christy Clark. So, you know, what's interesting is that since the resignation, because we've asked this question before, since the resignation, the one material change that has occurred relates to Chrystia Freeland, that her numbers are up since she stepped down, which to me says the way she resigned, what she said when she resigned, and what she did when she resigned actually had a positive impact on people's impressions of her, and her appeal has improved since her resignation.
Okay, so Nick, polling matters. Let's talk about this because everything changes with time. But how do you expect things to change? And what else are you going to be looking at in the weeks to come?
Well, this might sound weird, but we're going to see how well the Liberal Party does without a leader now that Justin Trudeau has stepped down, because now he's off the political menu. He's still visually there, but he's off the political menu. The other thing is there's going to be more focus on all of these other individuals as either candidates or potential candidates, because Justin Trudeau has stepped down as or has said that he will step down as both Prime Minister and leader of the party once the new individual is selected. Here's a little bit of polling trivia for you. Parties without leaders many times are more popular than parties with leaders, because there's nothing to repel people. Yeah, think of it this way. So the Liberals don't have a leader right now. For average Canadians, they're thinking, oh, maybe Mélanie Joly will be the leader, maybe Chrystia Freeland, maybe Christy Clark, maybe Champagne, maybe Mark Carney, and people project onto the party. So the thing is I would watch for the Liberal numbers to improve. But the fact of the matter is they're more than 20 points back of the Conservatives. Although they might improve, the reality is that they are so far behind right now. We're still looking, if an election were held today, I would say even in the next few weeks, we still be looking at a pretty comfortable conservative blue wave that would put Pierre Poilievre in as Prime Minister, likely in majority territory.
Okay. Really interesting stuff. Nick Nanos, Chief Data Scientist and founder of Nanos Research. Good to be with you. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Emergency crews responded to another encampment fire earlier today, this one near Kensington Market.
CP24's crime analyst Steve Ryan joins us now with the very latest tonight. Steve.
Yeah, Lena, this parquet is on Glasgow, just north of Cecil. Toronto Fire tell us that they responded to a radio call at 8 o'clock this morning. And when they arrived on scene here, they saw that one of the tents that's in this encampment was on fire, and there was somebody inside of the tent. The Toronto Fire were able to put the fire out before it spread, and they rescued a person inside of the burning tent. It's been rushed to hospital and is now receiving oxygen in a hyperbaric chamber. Now, we heard from the mayor earlier on today as well. This is one of many fires that have been reported over the last couple of weeks, and that's because it's getting very cold out here, and the shelters are full, and people are desperate to stay warm, so they risk their lives by lighting up propane tanks or fires so that they can stay warm. But in doing so, they certainly are putting their health and safety in jeopardy as a result. Here is more from the fire chief, who we heard from earlier today. Here's what he said.
This is not only a Toronto problem, this is a problem across North America. I've spoken to peers from Vancouver and to some of the cities in the United States as well. Toronto Fire Service has taken an incredibly proactive and collaborative approach with a number of city divisions, especially Toronto Shelter Division, and we will continue to do so. We attend the encampments. We have public educators go out and provide education material on how to prevent fires. We actually, when we attend these sites, if we note flammable, combustible liquids, we will remove them. But it's unfortunately, as the weather gets colder and stays cold, we anticipate having more of these fires, and we will just continue to work to take every precaution we can to prevent them.
The caution tape is still up, and you can see what's left of that encampment that was tucked away in the corner there, and that could have been a lot worse with all the wood and foliage around that encampment there. But good work by Toronto Fire to put that out, and hopefully this person is going to make a full recovery in hospital as he is getting oxygen right now. I'll send it back to you.
Live tonight. Steve, thank you. Well, good news for TTC riders. The mayor and TTC chair confirm fares are staying right where they are. It's part of the upcoming 2025 budget.
And CP24's Andrew Brennan joins us live with those details. Andrew.
Hey guys, so we're here at Wilson Station, and some good news you were mentioning having to do with fares staying as they are. But I'm looking behind me at these buses that are here, and the reason I do is because the service increases we're going to see include the idling time that you have here in it. So when we talk about a 6% increase in service hours, this is included as well. And also the upcoming service needing to be done for, as we anticipate at least, the LRTs for lines 5 and 6. So the new Finch LRT and the long-awaited Eglinton LRT, both expected to be up and running in 2025. All of that's included in this headline item from the City of Toronto and TTC of a 6% increase in service hours. So as much as there's good news here about the promise of 5 minutes or less for off-peak subway times for lines 1 and 2, or 6 minutes or less for the major streetcar routes downtown, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., there's also other things to look at as well. We talk to people, though, and what people are looking for from the TTC is wide-ranging, but really just lands with not having to be outside like this, waiting for a bus as often. Take a listen.
That should improve, as stations, more buses coming, so it's not as packed. People, standing, people with disability, they're standing on the bus, or people with, pregnancy, they're standing. And people that are sitting, they don't want to give up their seats.
I think it's a good idea as long as there can be improvements for better services, and I think should be maybe officers inside the trains too. I have seen people smoking inside the subways, which is really concerning because they just let it go and they don't do nothing about it. And there's kids, there is all senior people, right? And it does bother us sometimes.
Now, disregarding the smoking part in terms of cleanliness and also maintaining our fleet of buses and streetcars, etc., there is millions of dollars more in maintenance and for cleaning that's part of this proposed budget. Lena Bakari, first, that does need to be passed, though, by the TTC board later this week. Back to you.
Andrew Brennan reporting live. Thank you, Andrew. You're watching Live at 5.
A candlelight vigil is being held in Richmond Hill, marking the anniversary of the downing of a Ukrainian passenger jet in Iran. More on this after the break. A candlelight vigil is being held in Richmond Hill this hour to mark the 5th anniversary of the downing of a Ukrainian passenger jet in Iran.
Dozens of Canadian citizens and permanent residents were among the 176 people killed. CP24's Melissa Dutton is at that vigil tonight, and she joins us live with the latest. Melissa.
Yeah, Lena, so we're seeing families gathering here at Unity Park for this candlelit vigil. It's set to begin just moments from now. Walking around here, you're going to notice photos of the victims. We have music playing. There are lights also on one side, just kind of highlighting different people that are being remembered today. This is because 176 people were killed 5 years ago. 55 of them Canadian citizens, 30 permanent residents. They were on board the Ukrainian International Airlines flight that was shot down by Iran's Revolutionary Guard shortly after takeoff from an airport in Tehran. Moments ago, I was speaking with a woman. Her husband was killed on this flight. She and other family members of these victims are calling for justice. They say they still want someone to be held accountable for this tragedy that brought so much heartache to so many. I was speaking with another woman. She's not directly connected to the victims, but she says it's important for her to come to these vigils to show her support. She's from Iran. She says she wants people to know what's happening there, that justice needs to be served as well, just really highlighting the situation in a country that she still has such close ties to, but she wants people to know what's happening there. We are expecting this vigil to begin shortly. A number of speakers expected to be addressing this crowd. Again, we're seeing the crowd really build as well. Other events that happened throughout the day. We know that families were visiting several cemeteries, visiting the grave sites of the victims, because there were so many that were from our community, and they're all being remembered here today. As soon as this vigil begins, we're going to bring you more sounds, more sights from this, as these victims, again, 176 people who are on board this flight, so many of them with connections to Canada, are being remembered. Back to you.
176 families that will never be the same again. Melissa Duggan reporting live tonight. Well, the driver charged with killing NHL hockey player Johnny Gaudreau and his brother Matthew has pleaded not guilty to homicide charges.
Sean Higgins entered the plea in a New Jersey courtroom today. This is after turning down a prosecution offer of 35 years in prison. The 44-year-old is accused of killing the brothers in a drunken crash as the pair was cycling on a rural New Jersey road the day before their sister's wedding.
5:19 minus 6, you're watching Live at 5.
And coming up, considering the importance of facts over fiction as a social media giant scraps a system aimed at tackling misinformation.
Welcome back. Ahead of Donald Trump being sworn in as U.S. president, the owner of Facebook and Instagram is scrapping its third-party fact-checking program, just like X did.
And CP24's Phil Perkins joins us live with the details of the decision by social media giant Meta. Phil.
Well, Bakari, Lena, Mark Zuckerberg took to Facebook and Instagram and Threads, for those who are using that, to say that they're going back to their roots, where they want to increase free speech, decrease censorship, and they're doing that, as you mentioned, by scrapping their third-party censorship program, which they had elsewhere. And they said there were just too many biases, too many mistakes. And so they're instead swapping that for a community notes program, kind of like what X has been implementing. So instead of a third party doing it, it is the users that will chime in and point out whether they believe something is misinformation or is racist or is sexist. And so while that also has its own critiques on how it's being implemented in X, that is a direction that Meta is going to be going. Here is Mark Zuckerberg a little bit more on this big announcement on their shift to more free speech.
The recent elections also feel like a cultural tipping point towards once again prioritizing speech. So we're going to get back to our roots and focus on reducing mistakes, simplifying our policies, and restoring free expression on our platforms. More specifically, here's what we're going to do. First, we're going to get rid of fact checkers and replace them with community notes, similar to X, starting in the US. We tried in good faith to address those concerns without becoming the arbiters of truth. But the fact checkers have just been too politically biased and have destroyed more trust than they've created, especially in the US.
Some other changes they're doing, they're going to be changing their content moderation on very sensitive subjects like gender, like politics. They initially kicked in this, the way they moderated content, but tried to be more inclusive. But he says what ended up happening, they were shutting people out by simply just expressing their honest views. And so they're going to make that a little bit more open for everybody to share their thoughts. And with some of these changes, there's a lot of them. There's about 4 or 5 big changes that Zuckerberg announced. We spoke to some social media experts, and a lot of them have some concerns about these changes. Here's Mohit Rajans with thinkstart.ca. Quickly or no? No, we're not going to say. Anyways, he, Amber Mack, and other social media insiders, they're concerned about this. We'll see what happens because Mark Zuckerberg, he owns the company. He's going to do what he wants. Back to you guys.
Okay, CP24's Phil Perkins joining us live from the newsroom. Phil, thanks a lot.
No problem.
Well, that is now 5:24, holding at 6 below zero. This is Live at 5.
After the break, we're going to have the latest numbers on GTA home sales. Stay with us for a closer look. GTA home sales dropped in December compared to the same time in the previous year.
Well, the Toronto Regional Real Estate Board says that sales were down 1.8% compared with December of 2023. The average selling price declined 1.6% compared with the year earlier. Treb notes 2024 was a year that showed a housing market in flux, with sales still lagging far behind new listings, giving buyers ample choice and preventing widespread price growth.
Generally speaking, whether you're talking about the GTA or even the surrounding Greater Golden Horseshoe, high borrowing costs have impacted the market. I mean, whether you're talking about detached homes or whether you're talking about condominium apartments in the city of Toronto or the surrounding suburbs, we're well off the sales peak that we saw in 2021 and first part of 2022. But again, I mean, I think as we continue to see interest rates trending lower over the next 6 months or so, that's going to see a lot of different types of home buyers sort of rethinking their decision to purchase a home.
The Bank of Canada lowered its policy rate by a 0.5 percentage point back in December, bringing it to 3.25%, while signaling a more gradual approach to future cuts in the new year.
Right now it's 5:28, holding at 6 below, feeling more like 14 below. This is Live at 5.
Donald Trump is forcing more reaction from politicians on this side of the border, from both the Prime Minister and Premier. We're going to have more details coming up on Live at 5.
Canada as a U.S. state, not a snowball's chance in hell, says the Prime Minister. Canada fires back after Donald Trump says that he would use economic force to make this country the 51st state. And the Premier continues to push for a united approach.
Uncertainty on both sides of the border, one day after Justin Trudeau calls it quits. We're going to have the latest on who could throw their hat in the ring to replace the Prime Minister.
And more details are emerging about a former Canadian Olympian turned suspected drug lord. We're going to check in with CTV's Rahim Madani.
You're watching Live. Good evening, and thank you for joining us. I'm Lena Latifat.
And I'm Bakari Savage. The province says that it's pushing ahead at strengthening security at the U.S. border with the threat of major tariffs looming.
It comes as President-elect Donald Trump continues to talk about his plans for this country. For the latest, we're joined live by CP24's Beatrice Faisman. Beatrice.
Lena, Bakari, the war of words continue on both sides of the border. We've seen today Premier Doug Ford trying to ramp up pressure on the federal government to do more to secure the U.S. Canada border. That was kind of one of the key asks from Donald Trump when he was talking about imposing initially these 25% tariffs on all Canadian imports into the United States. Meantime, today, Donald Trump was at his home in Mar-a-Lago talking about using economic force, essentially to strangle Canada. Here's a bit of what the president-elect had to say.
We're spending hundreds of billions a year to protect it. We're spending hundreds of billions a year to take care of Canada. We lose in trade deficits. We're losing massive. We don't need their cars. You know, they make 20% of our cars. We don't need that. I'd rather make them in Detroit. We don't need the cars. We don't need their lumber. We have massive fields of lumber. We don't need their lumber. We have to unrestrict them because stupid people put restrictions on, but I can do that with an executive order. We don't need anything they have. We don't need their dairy products. We have more than they have. We don't need anything.
Trump obviously using these threatening tactics to try to get Canada and the Prime Minister to submit to his asks. The reality is the United States does need Canada. We do. A lot of trade, some $900 billion actually combined between the imports and the exports. And as far as the Americans themselves count, there are millions of jobs on both sides of the border created by this trade relationship as well. Today, Premier Doug Ford essentially announcing that the OPP would be reallocating some 200 of its officers to focus specifically on targeting and combating illegal crime on the cross-border activity, really. There's 14 different border crossings that are patrolled by the feds, by the CBSA. So the OPP will be responsible by anything really outside of that. We heard from the MPP out in Windsor specifically about his concerns when it comes to this.
So that means visible activities in key border areas. So OPP officers, drones, aircraft, maritime vessels, particularly think of Detroit River and Lake St. Clair, K9 units, and different specialized advanced technologies that can inspect vehicles before they get to the border. And once vehicles cross the border, we have inspection facilities on our highways, for example.
And so will that make a difference now, considering what Donald Trump is saying today? We'll have to wait and see. He's back in the White House in 13 days. Back to you.
Okay, reporting live from Queen's Park, CP24's Beatrice Vaisman. Beatrice, thank you. Along with that, Prime Minister Trudeau didn't mince words in his response to Trump's comments. Quote, there isn't a snowball's chance in hell that Canada would become part of the United States. Workers and communities in both our countries benefit from being each other's biggest trading and security partner.
For reaction to these latest developments, we're joined live now by Peter MacKay. He's a former Conservative MP and cabinet minister in the Harper government, holding the Justice, National Defense, and Foreign Affairs portfolios. Good to see you, and thank you for joining us here on Live at 5. Let's begin with explosive comments made by Donald Trump. He continues to troll Canada, and he's now talking about using economic force to make Canada a part of the U.S. This is as serious as it gets, and it really feels like we're getting bullied here. How would you deal with a bully, Mr. MacKay?
Well, I think much of what we heard in your previous report, by laying out the facts, and the facts are that America needs us as much as we need them when it comes to trade. We have a binational relationship with respect to NORAD and the protection and security of North America, particularly and more timely efforts around the Arctic protection is going to require more and more cooperation. And we're in international bodies like NATO, WTO. We work together so closely with the Americans on so many levels and so many institutions. We've heard it from Premier Ford, members of the federal government and others, cross-border between provinces and premiers and senators and governors. All of this really is a people-to-people relationship. But the economic threats, including sanctions and what was said today, don't help build a positive relationship in a world where we need to pull together, not fray at the edges as we're seeing in recent days.
Okay, so Peter, along with that, there's a question of leadership for this country. How would you advise the next would-be leader, a potential leader, to combat this globally?
Well, continuing the full court press, but that also includes, and I think importantly, diversifying our trade. And I would be actively pursuing trade with the United Kingdom, capitalizing on the comprehensive economic trade agreement that we have in place now with the European Union, as well as the TPP with members of the Asia-Pacific trading bloc. We have a lot of options available to us, quite frankly, that the Americans don't. But we're never going to be able to pull completely away or even lessen to some degree this important relationship that we have, the former NAFTA, now USMCA. And that is up for renewal, as you know, in 2026. So we have to, in some cases, tread lightly, but we have to be forceful in defending our interests and continuing this full court press in getting our case forward to Americans as well as to Canadians.
Mr. McKay, when Donald Trump talks about essentially annexing Canada, do you take that seriously, or is that highly impractical?
It's not only impractical, it's impossible. It would not and could not happen. And I think it is, and you said this yourself, I think, a moment ago, this is part of a negotiating tactic. It's part of the leverage that Donald J. Trump is well known for. And I do also believe that after the inauguration and when he takes on the role officially as president, he is going to have a lot of other fish to fry, as we say here in the East. He's got a lot of other big issues that he is going to have to deal with. He's promised to end the conflict of the war in Ukraine. He's going to wade in more on Middle East issues and sanctions perhaps against Iran. He has a lot of other issues. I almost feel that this is a bit of a cat and mouse toying with us currently because it's easy. A lot of it is online. He's doing a lot of interviews and a lot of social media. I don't think we should get too bent out of shape by some of these comments. It needs to be a case of stay calm and carry on and focus on some of our own challenges. Another issue that's coming down the pipeline is he's going to definitely lower taxes. He's going to start exporting energy again. Canada has to do its part to pick up the productivity and competitiveness that we need to build our economy here at home.
All right, Peter MacKay, former Conservative MP and Cabinet Minister in the Harper government. Thanks a lot for your time and insight this evening.
Thanks so much.
My pleasure. Thank you both.
It's now 5:38, sitting at -6 in the city. Let's get a check on that commute home with our traffic specialist, Adjoa and Cia.
Yeah, good evening, Lena Bakari. It has been quite the slow go on this Tuesday afternoon. And if your travels do take you home, you're stuck in the heart of rush hour and you're stuck in the midst of problems if you're on the 401 traveling on the westbound side. So as you head in the express, this is just on the approach to Bayview. It's this truck. Tows on scene, so it should be clearing shortly, but the right lane and shoulder is blocked. So you definitely are running into a backlog on the approach. Then 401 on the eastbound side, pretty busy starting from Renforth, continues slow out towards about Markham Road. The camera went out. That was because of a collision which we had in the collectors, which is blocking the two right lanes. That did all clear. Don Valley Parkway, as you make your way on the northbound side, pretty busy from Bayview Bloor as you head up to the 401. Southbound even slows over the 401 down to Bayview Bloor, and jam solid on the Gardner as you try to make your way out of and try to get in to the downtown core. So definitely a very, very busy evening. I'll send it back to you both.
Thanks a lot, Adj.
Welcome.
Well, the emergency crews responded to another encampment fire earlier today, this one near Kensington Market.
CP24's crime analyst Steve Ryan joins us now with the very latest on this new investigation. Steve.
Yeah, Lena, the location is Glasgow, just north of Cecil. It's the Parkette behind me here. Toronto Fire tell us that they responded at 8 o'clock this morning. One of the tents at this encampment was on fire. They were able to put the fire out fairly quickly, but a person inside of that tent had to be rushed to hospital where they are being treated for the lack of oxygen. They have been put in a hyperbaric chamber, and oxygen is being fed to them as the medical teams work on the health of this individual. So this is the latest of several fires that we've had in encampments in the last couple of weeks. There's no room in the shelters. The mayor said today that she understands that people are desperate when they're trying to stay warm and there is nowhere else for them to go, so they take the chances. And oftentimes, like we had here today, a witness said to me that there was propane tanks near the tent that went up in flames this morning. They do this, those that have no homes do this just as a way of surviving. We heard from Chief Jessup earlier on today as well, the fire chief, and here's what he said about this morning's occurrence. Let's listen.
We have confiscated and we have actually seen explosions at these fires, everything from propane tanks to the butane tanks in the Coleman camper stoves. We are now actually starting to see lithium-ion battery packs, the unregulated ones. So it's something that the crews are very mindful of. As I said, we do a lot of work with our staff on these encampment fires, making sure that they're aware of the risks. And again, it is something that is not just a Toronto problem. It is much bigger than our city alone. And we will continue to work with all city divisions and city council to make sure that we take every precaution we can for these.
The caution tape is still up, as you can see what's left of the tent that's tucked away in the corner there. Again, this could have been a lot worse with the wood and the the trees by that encampment. Toronto Fire did a heck of a job getting here on time to reduce the risk of that fire spreading. But sadly, one person still remains in hospital. Send it back to the desk.
24's crime analyst Steve Run. Steve, thank you. Well, U.S. authorities are concerned about the connections a former Canadian Olympian has as he continues to evade arrest on murder and drug charges. And CTV's Raheem Ladani joins us live with the latest. Raheem, I'm going over this. I'm thinking this is the next W5, Dateline, whatever you have. This story, it's pretty wild.
It's a fascinating story, Bakari, because here's the thing. We've known that prosecutors have been building a case against Ryan Wedding for quite some time now, him and 15 other defendants. However, what we've now learned is that they have, as part of their case, a number of pieces of evidence, including recordings from confidential informants and cooperating witnesses. And so they're asking the court now to take extra steps to keep the identities of those individuals sealed. The reason that they're doing that is because they're worried that Wedding still has access to a network of hitmen that they believe helped him carry out a number of crimes. Wedding is facing 4 murder and 1 attempted murder charge, including the slaying of a couple in Caledon last November. Now, those crimes are allegedly connected to the distribution of 1,800 kilograms of cocaine from Mexico through the U.S. to Canada. The defense wants all information of cooperating witnesses to be shared with any member of its team. Prosecutors, though, they object to that. They say that scope is too wide. They argue it contains information that could identify their sources and may expose them to safety risks. Now, while all of this plays out and 14 defendants are in custody, Wedding Bakari is still a fugitive.
Okay, CTV's Raheem Ladani with the latest on the story. Raheem, we're going to be following this as you do. Thanks a lot.
Thanks.
Right now, it is 5:44, holding at 6 below zero. This is Live at 5. Good news for transit riders. The TTC's latest budget proposal includes a fare freeze, but what about service? More on this with CP24's Andrew Brennan coming up.
Welcome back. Mayor Chow and TTC Chair Jamal Myers released new details of the upcoming budget.
And CP24's Andrew Brennan joins us live with those details. Andrew.
Hey guys, so we're at Wilson Station, and behind me you can see all these buses parked. So I bring that up because yes, there's a freeze in fares, and that's of course good news for everyday users of the TTC, making it as cheap as possible, let's put it that way. But these idling buses that are waiting to be put into service, under the service hours way that the TTC organizes things, in essence, if it's at a station waiting, it will still count as an increase in bus service. When we talk about 6% increase overall, it includes this. It also includes the need of service to actually operate the upcoming lines 5 and 6, which are the Finch LRT and the long-awaited Eglinton LRT, assuming based on Metrolinx, they are operating in 2025. We're going to have to get there first, but the other things that are part of this, some headline items, millions of dollars for maintenance of fleet and of TTC stations, and there's more. There's some service guarantees we heard from the mayor. Listen to this.
In the fall, we will deliver 6-minute or better service 7 days a week from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. on 3 streetcar routes, Dundas, Sinclair, and Bathurst. Imagine that. Faster. You don't have to wait as long. Also, on the subway, Line 1 and Line 2 off-peak period will operate every 5 minutes or better, and 6 minutes or better will be restored in Line 4.
The other thing that the City of Toronto and TTC are going to look to be doing is a pilot project that is going to try to stop those buses bunching together to have a sequence of 2 or 3 at once and then none for, say, 20 minutes. And on days like this, particularly when you forget a hat like I do, we spoke with some people today and they said they would be very much appreciative if buses were more consistent and also coming faster. So they are not waiting in the cold like this. Lena, Bakari, back to you both.
Oh, yeah, that consistency is key, especially in the winter months. I know everything you're talking about. Andrew Brennan reporting live for us tonight. Thanks, Andrew. You're watching Live at 5.
And a candlelight vigil is being held in Richmond Hill, marking the anniversary of the downing of a Ukrainian passenger jet in Iran. Here is a live look at the vigil. We're going to have more on this with Melissa Duggan. It's after the break.
Welcome back. A candlelight vigil is being held in Richmond Hill this hour to mark the 5th anniversary of the downing of a Ukrainian passenger jet in Iran. Dozens of Canadian citizens and permanent residents were among the 176 people killed.
CP24's Melissa Duggan joins us live with more. Melissa.
Yeah, Bakari. So 2 things happening here at this vigil. The memories of the victims are being honored by family members, but also there are calls for justice here tonight. I want to show you some of the vigil that's happening right now. This is Unity Park. We see speakers that have been taking to the stage, sharing what they've described as just unimaginable pain. They've lost husbands, wives, mothers, fathers, children, aunts, uncles. This group of families know each other because they share this pain. It was 5 years ago when 176 people were killed, 55 of them Canadian citizens, 30 of them permanent residents. They were on board a Ukrainian International Airlines flight that was shot down by Iran's Revolutionary Guard just minutes after takeoff. You know, this group, they have an association online, and they say before this happened, they were just normal people living normal lives, and now those lives have been shattered forever. One of the women I was talking to here today, her husband was killed on this flight. She shared a little bit about his memory. Have a listen.
فریاد زدیم نه فریاد زدیم نه به جنایتکار نه به آدم کش نه به آخوندهای رجاله نه به سردارها نه به سپاه.
My husband's name was Farid Araste. He was a PhD student in Carleton, and I supposed to join him right after our wedding. It's really hard to think that he's not here anymore with us. And after 5 years, I'm still in denial. I sometimes think that he's somewhere out there because he was livelihood and he had a lot of hopes. He always had plan, and I learned a lot from him.
I cannot imagine to be in the shoes of those families, losing their loved ones like that. It was so unfair, so injustice, and the way the world has been quiet about it, it's so sad. We just want the foreign governments, Western countries care about this, what is happening in our country, in Iran.
On this cold night in Richmond Hill, the photos of the victims are laid out here. We were hearing from Richmond Hill's mayor just a short time ago. He was speaking to this crowd as well, saying this park, Unity Park, will become a permanent memorial to the victims. I'm going to throw it back to you.
Okay, CP24's Melissa Duggan. Thank you. And with that, it's now 5:55, feeling more like 14 below outside. This is Live at 5.
Coming up, a sneak peek for Bills fans. We're going to have the latest. Stay with us. Welcome back. We'll remember that Canada Post strike. Well, Canada Post appears to have almost recovered from that months-long work stoppage.
Well, the postal company has reinstated on-time service guarantees and return to full service levels for domestic parcels. Canada Post says that customers should still expect some delays when it comes to business mail, such as flyers, as well as international mail.
Well, the Buffalo Bills have released new drawings of their future home. Take a look.
Okay, so this is going to be the new Highmark Stadium, touted as having visibility into the bowl from every concourse so that fans are going to be able to stay connected to the game when they leave their seats. The cost of the stadium, it's gone up from $1.4 billion to more than $2 billion, but it is expected to open in time for the 2026 season.
That is quite the price tag. It's 5:58 now, -6, feeling more like -14 out there tonight. You're watching Toronto's breaking news, CP24.
Thank you for watching. CTV News at 6 is next.